Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about cybersecurity strategies and solutions. We were just talking about specific examples. Felipe, I'm going to go to you and give us an example of where Fortinet has been able to maybe roll out a capability there that you'd like to enlighten our audience with.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. For the past couple of years, we've had a tremendous amount of success helping agencies deploy secure SD-WAN throughout their enclaves, both on unclassified and classified networks, both in the federal civilian space, the DoD space, intelligence community. And that's been fantastic and really great and successful. It's helped them out with, meeting some executive order principles, greater cloud adoption, and cloud on-ramp. And what we've done now is we're helping a couple agencies increase their visibility into those environments, right? So we kind of mentioned that just a second ago, but there are some agencies right now deploying our capabilities to get visibility into every instance, every resource, every piece of data that they have in the cloud, and in not just public cloud, but private cloud. We have agencies looking to leverage this in really unique use cases, and we're looking forward to some of the enlightenment that's going to bring us even because the facts are the federal government does at sometimes use these technologies and data in ways that industry did not think of, right? The missions are different. And so what we're finding out really is that our products really bring to bear a lot more than what we thought, which has been fantastic. Along with that greater visibility into these assets that they have in these various environments, we've been able to introduce some automation capabilities to detect those threats to those instances, to those resources, and also help them implement incident response capabilities along the lines of what CISA's guidance has been, had put out just a year and a half ago as far as an incident response playbook, help them with reporting. And that's just been fantastic. Unfortunately, I can't name names, it's not proper to do so. But we're very excited about the success we're seeing in those initiatives, and we're looking to duplicate that across the government.
Totally appreciate and respect that. And we can use our imagination there. And yes, at scale, Ron talks about second largest instance in the world. And no question, there are in hundreds of diverse environments out there. Very impressive. So if it's going to break, it's certainly going to break inside the federal government. There's no question about that as far as the use cases. Admiral Chase, I'm going to roll it up to you. Again, Ron just sort of top-lined the massive capability and industrial scale that he's working at. So are you. And there's no question about that, DoD being all over the globe. Why don't you give us an example, highlight a specific program that you'd like to touch on? Sure.
I alluded to the risk part, but one of the key roles that JFHQ DoD plays is that of triaging cyber maintenance. And I use that term deliberately. It can sometimes be called cyber hygiene, but I think that gets to a different culture problem, which I'll get back to later in the program, I hope. But this triaging of cyber maintenance is our approach to risk, right? So as we looked at the threat and we looked at the vulnerability, the power of partnerships here is absolutely key. Given the scale and complexity we're talking about, understanding the threat vector to start with, so we get a significant amount of help there from Cyber Command, NSA, the broader IC, and increasingly the commercial space. Because if we can get that down to the lowest unclassified level, on one hand, we may need nation level attribution or specifics that we might get from the IC. But in the field, what our cyber operators, secure and defend folks actually need is just tell me what the next step is and how do I break that chain that will stop bad things from happening to my unit. So commercial and threat intelligence offers us a way to get that down without the more highly classified pieces. So that what we've spent a lot of time doing to get after some of the risk is playbooks to break the vulnerability chain based on specific threats that we're getting from all the partners across the intelligence community as well as commercial. Partnerships have been significant in terms of what's the likelihood of these happening, understanding that diverse and complex mission space that we have and even our national partners might have. The partnerships that we have with services like we're talking about with the Army, understanding where they're coming from, what is their biggest concern, And then as we get toward the mission owners, typically our combatant commands and national partners, that gets especially important to make sure we understand what the impact of certain things are, and it helps prioritize our triage. So this approach across the board and partner engagement enables speed and exponentially decreases risk and helps reduce all the response time that might be necessary from an actual incident.
No question about that, Lamont. The Admiral speaks about partnership, talks about commercial environments. You all have a massive commercial environment. You sort of leverage a lot of those lessons learned into the federal environment and vice versa, I'm sure. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight where perhaps you're implementing this type of concept.
Yeah, there's a couple, but some of it I'll touch on is like, because we focus a lot on both two things: the architectures, how do we build these architectures out, and what do we put into place to be able to support that, so that you can understand, what is your surface of what you're protecting, what are the things that you're trying to build into there, what are all the assets and things that need to be a part of this ecosystem, so that you can do to support the mission on a day-to-day basis. So one of the things that we'll go and look at with some of our partners when we're working with the federal government is, what are the technologies that need to be put into place to be able to secure that network? What are the technologies that need to be secure the data? What are the technologies that need to be secure those end devices and all the edge computing things? So what we'll go in and partner on is, like we're working on right now with trying to move out the edge compute in the 5G and making sure that we're getting the data and the information out to the edge users is, okay, what are some of the things like SASE? What are the things that we can do with secure access service edge? And to make sure that we're securing that edge compute. What are some of the things that we're going to put into place for that zero trust architecture to be able to then say, okay, we're looking at not just stuff to protect at the perimeter and what's happening at the headquarters area, but how does it then protect things at the border? How does it then protect things when I'm out in the field for first responders? How do I then protect things when I'm working at on a flight line in those facilities? And looking at all that connectivity and transforming those networks and ensuring that we have the right technology in place to be able to do that. And then we're also looking at similar like what Admiral Chase was saying before about the partnerships and understanding the processes and procedures. One of the things that we're also proud of is working with agencies such as CISA. We have partners that are on board with the Cybersecurity Safety Review Board that we're working on and looking at all the processes and procedures, looking at what these threat vectors are, what are the things that industry can bring in to be able to talk about and help agencies and industry itself understand what the vectors are, what are some of the protection measures, what are some of the things you should look out for when you're trying to protect all the different aspects of your environment. As you know, that you've seen, and we've done this in our data breach investigation report, system intrusions are one of the largest things that are happening these days. It's where you go in, you have a lot of things coming in with hacking, malware, ransomware, which allow the threat actors to come do what the different things with stealing credentials, stealing information, putting in different things, which will then, put our nation in a precarious position to be able to protect each one of our citizens, each one of our soldiers, and all of our agencies. So what we're doing is, in these partnerships, we're looking at and providing information about what we see from a security aspect, what we're seeing from an infrastructure aspect. We're taking that information that we're working with our partners and the federal government, marrying that together and figuring out what are the right policies, procedures, and things that need to be put into place so that we can work lockstep to be able to then protect all of our assets and data that we have.
And we certainly do appreciate the partnership there. Bob, you talked about being over at CISA now for about a year and change. And no question that you've been spending a lot of time with the blocking and the tackling. And no doubt you've discovered a lot of things over there as far as securing your environment, et cetera. Why don't you give us an example of sort of where you stand right now, maybe a specific effort that you have underway in regards to strengthening and bolstering your environment?
Yeah, there's a couple good examples. I think the first, the Cyber Safety Review Board, as mentioned previously, is doing some really good work. We also have the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative that's been an information sharing platform here at CISA that's been very successful with our industry partners and is kind of expanding right now over one of our collaboration tools to, federal security operations center. So I think those are some examples that CISA is really proud of that's externally facing, and also, our increasing services that are being more rapidly deployed to support, government. The protective DNS service has gone, extremely well as we migrate, agencies off some of our legacy platforms. I think internally here in my office, what we're excited about is, we're a relatively small agency. Under
small but mighty.
Small but mighty from a personnel perspective, but that gives me a lot of agility to maybe do things that some of these other agencies can't necessarily consume. We can be kind of a test bed. So as we're building out one of our new environments, we're not going to be using Active Directory. We're going to be using the Azure AD functions fully. We're really able to do different things with identity here. We're really able to kind of take advantage of being a little bit more bleeding edge as we're building out our systems, because it's not like when I was at CBP and I had 75,000 users. It's much smaller.
Or a million like Ron does.
Or a million like Ron does,
right.
Where I have some applications where we're supporting hundreds of thousands of users, or, the ACE program, which basically supports users across government, in industry as well,
Sure.
So we have very critical systems here of the same criticality. But we're able to, what I'm really excited about is I'm working with, this is a cyber agency and infrastructure security agency. We can never forget those missions in emergency communications, but it's a technical workforce. So I really need to, my office really needs to be on the bleeding edge, or people just won't want to work here. That's one of the most important things to me is I have to make remote work really effective. I have to make the devices you get something that cyber operators want to work with, because there's nothing worse than trying to do your job and you have horrible IT, or the CI. I will not be successful in my job if my answer to everything is I have a policy. Or I think one of the things I always went back to in my prior role supporting law enforcement was, our enemies don't play by the same ethical rules we do. The cartels don't sit around, let's develop some policies and procedures before we utilize new technology. So while I need all of those things, first and foremost, I am bringing operator-centric mindset to my office. We need to live and breathe the mission so that we become a trusted partner, and that they want to come to us rather than, either building their own solutions or going rogue or some of the other things that can happen. So those are the things that I'm really driving here is we have to be the go-to group for technology so that our operators have the tools to do their jobs and not worry about some of those baseline things like working laptops, good mobility, all those other things. I really want them to concentrate on developing those great cyber tools and providing infrastructure security services or emergency comm services, rather than worried about all those other things they used to have to worry about in the older days of NPPD or early CISA.
Laser focused on, let's call it customer experience, right? I mean, that's really
customer experience, operator experience.
Your operators are your customers, right? So
100%.
Totally get that. So I really do appreciate that. Just out of curiosity, size of CISA generally?
Maybe about, I think, we'll finish out this year, maybe around 3,000 feds, maybe a little more.
Right.
But,
I think people, I don't know if
6,000.
people would realize that. They might think 30,000, they might think, 100,000, but it's, as you described, small but mighty for sure.
Very mighty.
Absolutely. And very important. Sterling, how about give us an example of where you'd like to highlight a program in respect to what you all are doing over there at Rubric?
Indeed. And let me just say, Bob, what a great response. It's really interesting to to hear about the balance that you're having to deal with, within your agency. I think we're seeing that industry wide. I mean, there's an interesting inflection point where we have all of these awesome solutions that are keeping us safe, but we still have to balance that with the human interaction. Our customers are the people that need to get their data. So I just thought that was a great response. From our perspective, in this arena, success means having a plan. It means having a plan. Look, we know we have to have all the standard security solutions that we've always had. You can't run a good infrastructure without a solid firewall, without IDPs, without some of those things we've already talked about. We also know that bad guys are also getting in, and some of these are some of the human factors that we've talked about as well, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But literally, success now means knowing where your data is. It means having that plan, and we're proud to have helped our DoD family apply these zero trust principles directly to their data. The idea is to classify the data so that you know where your data is during an attack. Many a times what we find is these attack vectors, when these things happen, these nation state actors, rogue people, these bad actors are actually lying in wait in the infrastructures for months. The point is that if you don't have your data classified beforehand, if you don't know where your data is, what it's doing, and to be able to tell what that blast radius is during that event, who got what, remember, there are fines levied for each piece of PII that's released. So having that plan really is success there in the beginning. Of course, being able to allow our DoD family to take these awesome alerts and these things and justifications and forward them into best of breed solutions like Fortinet's FortiSIEM. So doing those things and bring the actual solutions that our DoD family needs is really what we consider success. One of the most exciting things I would say that really we've really brought to the industry most recently, I would really have to say, is something that we call threat hunting. If you think about what I just said, the fact that certain facets of these ransomware strains are in your environment for months at a time, think about what that means to your secondary set of data. We had historically IT ops and SecOps, and they really operated sort of in a siloed fashion in the past. Mm-hmm. Well, now when we have to bring this data back, both teams must work together. And that means not only bringing back the data quickly so we can get back up and running, but that also means allowing the SecOps team to be able to run those certain types of reports and procedures that they need to run to be able to answer questions of when did they enter? At what point can we recover? What did they touch and what do they have control of? So these are some of the things that the industry needs today. And we're here to make sure that our family has it.
No question, and certainly need that pre-breach and post-breach. No doubt about that. Admiral Chase, we're going to go to priorities. I know you have a lot of things on the plate. Give us your top 2 or 3 priorities for this year.
Sure, thanks. I already talked about the triage part, and that's the part where Cybercom is the supported mission. The other part where we are supporting others is what's the question I get asked most often is, what is the cyber risk to my mission? And that's usually from a combatant command or other element. So we have 45 different DoDN areas of operation, and essentially those that provision networks. And it's the folks that you would expect. All of the services, the combatant commands actually provision small portions of the networks themselves, usually in and around their headquarters. And then there's all the defense agencies for absolutely critical things like moving logistics, making sure healthcare is still there, that the financial operations still go. So harnessing all of those and understanding the risk and stitching together that story is our priority for this year. In order to do that, we're going to have to standardize some risk approaches in what we'll call security areas. And we need to do that in order to get after some of the speed, enhance the value that we provide to all of our mission customers, and then ultimately their mission success. The security areas that I'm talking about, we've talked a little bit about internet operations, your forward-facing things that the adversary can see right off the bat. We need to talk about and standardize risk approaches to our boundaries because we can't have unlimited variance. It would be helpful to be able to speed things up and make those decisions both internally and with our partners if we have common understanding of what those risks are. So we're going to spend a fair amount of time understanding and normalizing what we mean when we say this level of risk in these security areas. The others, we've talked, I think Ron talked extensively about endpoints and Microsoft. There's a whole lot of data to be had there, and understanding where we need to take operational standards and apply those in addition to some of the policy standards that will help understand, so we have at a defense in depth that is meaningful, continuous, and doesn't have gaps. And then some areas that we need some more work in, critical infrastructure, operational technologies in particular. That's not typically, a strong suit for our military folks. That usually requires a longer time in the industry and a specialized approach that we tend to see on the industrial side. So that's an area we're going to have to lean on those partnerships I mentioned earlier to understand and really to feed the mission and understand where we have building blocks in place that we may not understand the risk for. And then finally, all that gets supersized when we just start talking about weapon systems, and those, as they are increasingly networked, enabled, anything with a Cat 5, Cat 6, Cat 7 jack in it now is a potential adversary inroad, and we need to make sure those things are specifically hardened. Sterling mentioned in his comments, that the pieces that we see, and I would say it's the anomalous behavior and crashing on the security ops and the net ops side. Things don't present themselves as, hey, I'm the adversary, or I'm last night's configuration error. They present themselves simply as anomalies, and both teams have to crash on that. So that's a theme that we're going to continue to work on throughout the year. Thanks for mentioning that, Sterling.
A lot of moving parts there and a lot of focus on a variety of very important priorities. We're going to take another break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.